lot of as we were starting to record, there was a lot of USB hub talk, which I think maybe is a pretty fantastic topic because I think this isn't what I was going to start talking about, but I think there must be something in the USB spec that says you can't have more than 5 plugs in any piece of hardware.
No,
because I think it's very difficult. I mean, I've looked, and I would like something maybe like 20 ports. I think would be sufficient. Just a big board with lots of wires coming out like a porcupine. So maybe that's a good Kickstarter.
Well,
Someone could
we should
start.
take a quick poll. I have a 7-port USB hub connected, and as we were throughout the show, it's sort of like it doesn't seem like it should be this way, but you kind of know that you can only use certain ports for certain devices, right? Like once a port is sort of mated, it's like, oh, this is what I use for my video camera. You really never want to move it again, because if you move it, while it's supposed to be the same, it's not the same. So I don't know, Cote, how many ports does your hub have?
Let me move my microphone a little bit. I see. Now I'm not. I've got this one that has, I think, 3 power only ports.
Right. So I'm excluding those. We have to take those out. Right.
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got one anchor thing that has 7 data ports on it, and then I've got another one. I got the Cal Digital. Why the fuck is this so expensive? USB hub.
Oh, you bought that one.
That has 1, 2. I'm going to say it has 6 of all USB types on it.
All right, now, but so do you have like a preferred as the Cal Digit, like it's for the most important equipment, and then you sort of back off to like, less important devices are relegated to probably your Anchor 7-port,
It used to be like that, but now I think I'm in the I'm more like you were saying. I'm just like I don't know. Anything could happen. It's any USB hubs game at this point.
Like, sometimes it works,
sometimes it doesn't.
Like, you're a support person's nightmare. What do you have plugged in? Who can say? Where is it? Fates to cry.
All right, well, Matt, what about, give us yours? Like, I'm almost afraid to ask, Matt. Like, what do you have plugged in? How many ports do you have on your hub?
So I've got, so as we discussed last episode, I'm split across 2 computers. So I've got 2 mice and a keyboard plugged into a USB switch, so I can share it with my PC, and then that USB plugs into another hub that has power going into it. And I'm trying to think what's plugged into it. This mic. No. Yeah, this mic is plugged into it. And then that hub plugs into my laptop. And then I had to put this camera straight to the laptop because the hub never worked. I tried different hubs and it would
well, you're a whole nother level. I mean, you're cascading hubs. There's no way. You call the support desk with that, they're immediately going to reject. They're like, that we don't support that. But it doesn't matter what the USB spec says. Cascading hubs is not supported anywhere.
Cascading hubs not supported, but the key is, like, it's actually not that many devices, and I put as much stuff straight onto the Mac rather than use the hubs because I found the hubs unreliable. But there is a 16-port hub available on Amazon, Cote. I'm just saying, you can up your game. Yeah.
Maybe it's just not available from Amazon Germany. It might be like against EU policy.
Oh,
well, we can only hope, because this was a big Apple event this week. Maybe we'll talk about it. But like underneath the VP of cables, do you think they have like a senior director of like hubs or someone trying to make VP? And he's like, you know what he's saying? He's like, we're making a lot of money on these cables, but you know what we could do? We could just make hubs, and we could just charge as much as for a hub that we do for like a Mac Mini, and just be like, that would be the pitch. It's like, we're just going to take the processor out of the Mac Mini, and we're going to sell exactly
put it in a hub.
Yeah, we're just tiny, and we're gonna. I don't know. We're gonna start it at $4.99. And you know what? People are gonna buy it. Like we would all buy it.
So somebody made a very wrong career bet, thinking that they were lining up to be the VP of cables, and now they're like the director of hub testing. and that is like a career dead end.
Hub testing.
They're like, okay, your job is to certify that this device works with every Mac, and the guy just goes around plugging in the hubs. Like,
that's what I'm saying, Dad. Like, I feel like that person's like, I got to get promoted, and I got to have like an 80% margin piece of hardware, and I'm gonna have hubs.
Sorry, dude.
I think that's what people want.
You're gonna have to leave Apple to get promoted out of that job, because that is a dead end.
I like where you're going with this, Brandon, though, and I think so. I don't think the Mac Mini was talked about this week. I didn't watch stuff, but I think maybe that could be a possible future for the Mac Mini. I don't know what kind of software they need to put on it, but it's going to be like just a hub, like just a stock Mac Mini.
It's a dongle. The next version of the Mac Mini is just a dongle that hangs off your monitor.
There you go, the Mac dongle. And it's its own computer. It has the computational power to be an effective, always working USB hub. And I'm going to say we're going to have the Mac dongle that's going to start at like 15 ports. And, I think maybe there's some variation of how many USB versus USB-A-C, BD, whatever. Or maybe what it does is, I'm going to throw this out here. Maybe it has like a big collection of adapters that are just attached to it on those weird little rubbery things that you can put in and out. That way, it's fully compatible.
You're cutting into the margin on the device, Cote. Those are accessories for the Mac Mini hub.
That's right. They send you a keychain, but it's instead of actually having keys, it just has rows of adapters just sitting there.
Totally.
These are all the things you actually need to use the Mac that we never show on the actual videos.
And then I think we're gonna have the Mac Dongle Pro. The Mac Dongle Pro is gonna have two primary features. One, it has 25 ports, which is gonna be great, right?
You joke, but I actually in the one of the Slack channels I hang out about Apple devices, somebody showed up and they're like, what Mac device can I get with the most USB ports on it? And now I have the answer. Now it's the Mac Hub
Mac Dongle Pro.
Yeah, Mac Dongle Pro.
Actually, there's three main features. One, 25 ports on the Mac Dongle Pro. And of course, you're gonna get a keychain of 25 adapters just in case, right? You never know. And then two, it's gonna actually work just like as you would expect with monitors. You're just gonna like plug a USB-C cable into it, put that into the monitor, and then you could even go to that monitor, plug a USB-C cable into that monitor, and put that onto another monitor. I think they call that daisy chaining or something, but whatever it is.
You're gonna have to go give us a fine reading of the USB spec, Cote, and get back to us on the feasibility of the outer edges of what is capable, and then come back with the design.
Well, we'll just get Apple Intelligence to do that for us. And
finally, dear Midjourney, please draw me a painting similar to Vermeer in style of a 64-port Mac Pro.
Oh, 64-port. Oh, that would be. Now, the third feature, and I think this is what everyone's really going to be excited about, is it'll actually work.
Sold.
Well done. That's a great. That is a fantastic drop. Yes. I think we have invented it. I hope someone does do that. Well, for those watching streaming, just know when you listen to the podcast, you're gonna hear a great ad read by me. But if you're watching this video, go see our friends at Nasuni, and they can help you out. And they've been a great sponsor, so check them out.
So, right, for those of you keeping track at home, the recommendation was to go get a Mac Pro and buy a bunch of USB daughter cards.
Uh-huh.
Well, what's funny as we were talking there, I was thinking to myself, like, maybe this is really the only use for the Mac Pro now is literally
and the guy was like, I will do that. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's expensive.
Right. And you put in, you just buy the cards, right? Just what you said. Like, you're just like, I don't know how many ports are per card, but you're like, I'm just going to literally put in 5 cards of just USB.
Yeah. And the guy said he was like provisioning USB devices and he had to do like thousands of them. And I was just like, oh God. And they had to be done from a Mac. And so he was like, he was going to go expense like $5,000 of, Mac Pro with USB devices.
And instead what he needs is I forget like what Thomas Jefferson would use, the autoscriber, where you've got like one pin that hooks to an arm, that hooks to another arm, that hooks to an arm, and you just line all the Macs up, and you can do your USB stuff.
Was Thomas Jefferson, was he a DevOps person? Was he the first to really like, was he kind of like an SRE at heart? Like he was like, I have the automation. I don't know.
This is a good question.
Maybe
was he like, breaking down walls?
Maybe you're the philosopher.
I think I learned that from Hamilton. That was one of the songs.
Oh, that'd be too funny. All right. Well, I guess we're on a tight schedule here. So, Cote, get us going.
Oh, yeah. We're acting like it.
Matt can make his appointments. Galileo. Yes, Galileo. Like in the chat there. Sorry. Go ahead, Cote.
Well, I think we're kind of in this era of AI now. Brandon and I started a little segment called "How Do We Use AI?" I want to cover very briefly this episode. We don't need to get into it because I want to get to AI hardware spend, things like that. Seems like it's going to be a thrilling couple of years for me with people talking about hardware. But I found a nice use for the AI, which you can see in the newsletter episode I sent out today. If you go to newsletter.cote.io, and that is, there's the U.S. presidential debate. I didn't, I read the New York Times and the Fox News coverage. They were like from parallel dimensions. I don't know what they must have been watching different things, each of them. But you could go. I went to Perplexity and I was like, read these two things, and here's a debate transcript, and tell me like how these, like, write me an article like based on both of these, and also point out the differences between them, which was you can find a link to it in my newsletter if you're interested. I think it did an okay job. It was pretty boring. I got to say the other two articles were very interesting and exciting. Whereas this one
AI doesn't understand the zingers, right? They don't understand the digs and the subtle, jabs of getting people on all the stupid things they've been saying.
It was kind of a bummer. It did make me think of something interesting to start using in other stuff, which is what is not covered in these two articles. Right now, of course, it knows that because it had this transcript, and I didn't actually go verify it, so maybe it just made it up. But that's a fun thing to ask about. It's like, what's missing from this? Like, I guess if you more in our area, if you were to get the transcript of some sort of like 93-hour keynote and kind of like compare it to coverage, what was covered and not covered, might be interesting. But the only other note I want to make is I also asked Jim and I to do this, and Jim and I said no. So good job, Google. Really just like not getting involved in things, which is fine. I guess I don't really know if that kind of thing is Google's fault or just like those 5 people on the internet who are always trying to get it to talk about like bad things. But so it goes. Now, like I was saying, it looks like I didn't read the, speaking of financials, very closely, but Dell and other people, it looks like they're doing great with AI equipment. I think I've got the numbers here in front of me. AI server orders and shipment rose sequentially, with 3.2 billion in orders and 3.1 billion in shipments. Now, I'm curious. Here's, we don't need to answer it for this, but here's like maybe the clouded judgment person. Maybe there's like clouded AI. He can start up a parallel newsletter. But what I need is like, I want some kind of analysis of like what is AI server, right? Like, how is this different? Maybe because it has an NVIDIA thing in it or something, but like, how is it distinguished from other server
or AMD or Intel
that you might encounter? And that seems like that will be an important classification, because otherwise, like at some point, it's just like, computers. All of it is just AI stuff. But how do y'all think like this distinction is being made of an AI server or an AI hardware versus computer?
Well, I think Matt kind of hit it. I mean, I think what they say in the article and what makes sense is basically it's just what they refer to as, quote, GPU accelerated system sales. So that would basically be the difference, is that when you ordered the server, you load it up with your favorite GPUs, maybe they're NVIDIA, maybe there's something else, and anything that has that in it, I think, is now being allocated to AI sales. And if you just to buy the regular old, big old Intel x86 server chips without any, GPU, that would just be,
That
just
makes
your
sense.
regular
Yeah.
old server sale.
And it's probably just as fuzzy as the way they counted VMware server sales, right? So that's probably going to still include storage and networking to support those workloads. They're like, oh, this workload has been identified as, for VMware. Maybe it's going to be, a combined platform. Maybe it's just happens to be in the same order, but I bet they're counting, they're probably counting the AI shipments the same way. They're like, we're building out a new AI data center that just happens to have, a boatload of networking involved in the order that, there's no GPUs in
That
there,
makes
but
sense. So that's pretty easy to slice. So, you've got like the 10 CAD CAM machines that people have been ordering every year. Just you lump those in there too, probably. No one's really
workstations.
Yeah. That's
Probably not that many. It's probably pretty easy. It probably doesn't skew the data too much if you just happen to include those in the AI sales as well.
I think they throw that in to sweeten the deal, right? It's just like, and if you act now, we'll throw in 10 CAD CAM stations.
Yeah, you get a free Autodesk license.
I do think it's interesting, Cote. Maybe I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but it is kind of interesting looking back at this, like in retrospect. All Dell spun off VMware, and then ultimately VMware was bought, right? Which we've talked about a lot, and obviously, Cote, you live that. But I thought just something that was interesting is that that this quote unquote AI server business is now bigger than VMware used to be. When I don't know, when they say bigger, it's always like I think they just mean revenue, not necessarily profit. So that's I don't know if it's apples to apples, but it is kind of. I remember when we were talking, this was just happening. It just felt like, wow, it's just a lot of like financial engineering going on. It's even kind of complicated to just follow it, even if we followed it pretty closely. But now I don't know. Now you look back on it, and it's like, I don't know. I guess I think if you're Dell, I guess it probably made sense. It's like you spun off VMware and kind of let it go live its life in a new home, and then you've replaced it with Gen AI and selling all these servers. I don't know if they predicted that or if it just kind of worked out well, but it's sort of like you're just kind of like right back to where you were. So I don't know if that's like great corporate strategy, or is that just luck, or does it even matter? Like it's just, it is what it is.
Well, I was thinking about this general thing. You were on the Cloud News of the Month this month, I think. However, it sounded like you recorded it 2 weeks ago or something. I forget the exact setup. And also, there's a great endorsement of my world famous newsletter in there, which I appreciate very much. That was nice. But it was one of you or Brian brought up the point that Intel used to be pretty good. Well, maybe they still are, but historically they've been good at basically helping create an ecosystem of people who create software that consumes compute. So basically, they create the software that drives the market for buying bigger machines. I think someone joked, hey, you should stop using Office, use other things, right? Like come up with all this other stuff. And it did get me thinking while I was walking around listening to that, is like, I wonder if does anyone still do that? Because I remember Intel stickers everywhere. And I remember always being not vexed, but slightly confused about all the open source community stuff Intel would do, because it seemed like it didn't result in direct sales. But then again, I guess they need, it made sense that you want Linux to work on Intel, and it's such an odd thing. But
and
I
DevOps.
guess
You need DevOps to work on it.
You got to have DevOps to work on Intel. But it makes sense if you had this sort of belief that the bigger we grow the compute pie, the bigger we grow the Intel pie. So just do that, right? Now, all of that said, I didn't quite think about it this way, but you're making me think, Brandon, I almost feel like the AI thing, even though it's 2 years since ChatGPT, and I realize it's not all of the AI thing. That's just when it became apparent to the world that it was a thing and therefore drove all this excitement. But I kind of feel like no one really saw that coming and wouldn't have had time to plan anything. So maybe now you could start planning stuff, but I don't know if there's that much intentionality behind the whole ecosystem of AI stuff. Like, it seems like there's just a lot of opportunisticness. I mean, I guess as evidence, there's a shortage of whatever a GPU is, right? Like, you would think if you were anticipating that, you would have planned to sell a bunch of it. But it does seem like maybe now it would catch up where you could start doing, what do they call it? Market development funds, MDF, and all this other kind of funding across the spectrum to drive AI stuff.
But I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes maybe it just feels like Dell. I mean, also because I live here in Austin, and I know both of you are very familiar with Dell as well. And it's sort of like, I think maybe sometimes it's just sort of like, oh, it just seems like in the background, but it's like, wow, it's like I forget sometimes like how big a company it is, and like maybe it is just sort of like it isn't necessarily. We don't have to say it was sort of like great planning, but it's sort of like Dell just seems to put itself in the right position. It's just like, well, it seems like, I mean, think you go back to this case and be like, hey, seems like a good time to sell VMware. Why not? Right. And it's like, we can get a real premium for it. The investors will like it. It's sort of like, hey, let's just do what Wall Street sort of likes. And then they do that and they kind of end up with, if you will, cleaning up their balance sheet. And then it's like, well, turns out people really want these AI servers. Like, we're good at building servers. Let's just build those, and let's just sell those. And I think it's interesting to contrast this a little bit with like, Oxide. I guess like Brian Cantrell and his team, right? Their podcast is great. And I'm always thinking to myself, man, if I had to like, my life depended on like a server running correctly, I would go to Oxide, right? And when you listen to them talk, they generally don't have anything good to say about like servers from big companies like Dell, HP. And it's kind of the whole premise of the company. But then at the same time, it's always like, wow, I don't know. These companies are making tons of money. You know what I mean? So it's like I guess I kind of feel like Oxide is probably both right, but like I think Dell and HP and all the other companies would just be like, yeah, it doesn't matter. We're just making a ton of money. I'm glad that you've like written all the drivers and you've gotten rid of all the bugs and your stuff is so much better, but like people keep buying our stuff. So which is like a weird, it's a weird thing to keep in your head.
But it's similar to the way everyone was kind of down on electric vehicles and Tesla and the like. They're like, why would I get that? It doesn't have the range, and the rest of the carbon emitting, auto industry went on happily, collecting their money. And then all of a sudden, Tesla keeps compounding growth and doubling. And, Elon Musk turns into the richest man in the world, and dozens of other electric car startups happen, and everybody pivots to that immediately. So I think it's the big server providers, your Lenovo, Dell, HP, Supermicro, they probably are quite complacent. And I'm sure Brian Cantrell would love to be compared to Elon Musk, but unlike Elon Musk, he was the founder of his company, and so I think they will carve out pretty good success. I've heard from a few people who have hands-on experience with the Oxide platform, and they're just raving about it. But unlike Dell, they don't have an AI play yet. If you listen to the podcast too, they've talked about the fact that they try to do everything in open source as much as possible, and NVIDIA is not open source friendly, which makes it hard to debug their stack. And if the NVIDIA GPUs fall over sideways, Oxide's holding the bag. And so that's the key to their open source friendliness is ease of maintenance. So I'm sure they'll come up with something. It'll probably be AMD based.
No, but that is like a really interesting part of, I guess, their strategy. It's like, because as I said before, if my life depended on it, I'd be like, go call them and buy their servers. They're going to work. And if they don't work, they'll do anything to fix them, which is great. I mean, that's great for the customer. But then you're like, well, if you just want to make money, they're like, well, turns out they have no AI play. Turns out what people really want to buy in bulk is AI. And Dell's just like, you know what, we'll sell you? We'll just sell you a bunch of AI servers.
Well,
it just works. Like, so, I mean, it is, I don't know. It's like, you kind of have to give some credit here to Dell. They're like, we're just going to build what people want and sell it and give them. And
they probably have a relatively finite set of hardware pieces in their inventory. And the key to them is just putting different storefronts on them. So you come in and you're like, I'm shopping for AI. And all of a sudden you're in the AI storefront. And on the back end, it's 95% undifferentiated from the I'm filling out my data center storefront, right? But maybe they even have different prices. So, they spend a fair amount of time just putting new purchasing interfaces over the top of that. And, but the people making these acquisitions, real purchases are probably going straight to their salespeople who have a spiff. They're told, you need to sell this kind of hardware and move this. And, that's what Dell's good at. That's what, most of these vendors are good at is, they're just working the numbers to sell a lot of volume. And it doesn't matter what today's shiny object is.
I've always had this theory about Dell, like perhaps the most valuable thing of Dell is just the online configurator, right? And because like I know a bunch of people that work at Dell and they all work in finance. And I'm always like, because you're absolutely right. When you go to the Dell website, like you can configure anything you want, and it will somehow spit out a price. And it's like, I don't know. That seems like to me, that seems like they're one of their key differentiators. It's just like, yep, we will configure anything you want that this system spits out. So have at it. If you want some, something with a lot of storage and no CPU, or
you got something with a lot of USB ports.
That's right. Right. That's what we need.
I feel like if Dell thought there was a market in it, they would sell you like a 50 port USB port.
Absolutely,
It'd be no problem. Yeah. It would be. I haven't like paid close attention to Dell in a long time, since I stopped working there in 2012, I guess. But they would be an interesting case study in like a tech company, because I think they've done all right. And I don't know, maybe this sounds harsh, but like I don't really know what their strategy is other than what Brandon just described. Like, they've got they've always have like all hardware, commodity hardware vendors. They always have like that kind of like, IBM's the king of this stuff, but Dell has stuff like this too. Like just like highly abstract ads about just like computers are awesome. Right. And like what they're gonna, in my head, the first thing that comes up is just like, we sponsored an F1 car, and it's just like, yep. And right. And so like there's but I think you do that kind of marketing when you are a commodity, right? Like you could be like Kraft macaroni and cheese, or like, a Dell server, and like you just need the person buying it to think that you're cool, because the other options are fine enough. I don't know if that's the case, but like it makes me think like, is when a company like Dell is doing strategy, is it like operation strategy? Like, how do we set up our logistics and manufacturing to be better? How do we do the configurator so you buy stuff? Or like, do they spend a lot of time thinking about like, it's what is this, 2020, and I saw that AI stuff. It's, I saw the GPT 1.2, and it's looking pretty crazy. Like, what if this became a big deal? We should position ourselves and start kind of pushing this string along, so that in 2024 we can sell like, billions and billions of AI equipment. Or like, are they kind of like creating their future? Or are they like, like you're kind of saying, Brandon, just like really good surfers, and they just ride the waves around, kind of adapting to what they have? And of course, the strategy of being a really good surfer is that you've got lots of surfboards, and like you've bought lots of beachfront property with lots of good waves. This metaphor is going to die out. But like,
no, I like it, Dell. I think they do. I think Dell has a lot of beach houses with a lot of surfboards, and they seem to surf pretty well. Well, before we, have run out of time this week, Matt, I've had this in the list for a while, because I feel like you're the perfect person to answer this question. I read that GEICO is dropping VMware for OpenStack.
Yes.
And yes, I did say that correctly. That was OpenStack. And my question is just like what? Is this even possible? So I wanted your take, Matt. Like, is like, what's going on here? What would you say about that?
OpenStack never died. It just kept going. No, I mean,
on VMs though. Would you say, like, I kind of wrote in the notes here, apples to oranges? Like, really? Like you go ahead.
I mean, it's if VMware is now positioning themselves as your private cloud solution, OpenStack's always positioned themselves as your private cloud solution. There's hypervisor under both of them. And then there's a software stack on top of it to make it easy to provision and manage your workloads. That's apples to apples. It's not that shocking a transition. I think the hard part for GEICO, of course, is going to be all the VMware admins who have non-transferable skills. It's a different stack. A lot of people have defined themselves by being good at VMware, and that ecosystem of tooling. And most of it just doesn't exist over in the OpenStack land, as far as I know. So yeah, it never went away. It held up for a lot of large workloads. Kind of kept going. And when people say, like, looking at VMware alternatives, I'm sure IBM and Red Hat walked up and said, "We got this." Yeah.
Well, for sure. I just want to say, open invitation. Anyone at GEICO is welcome to come on the show. I want to hear about. I want to hear about this project, like how'd it go, what's going on, all the things Matt just said. Did you have to retrain people? I don't know. And to your point, I guess OpenStack, it never dies. It just, because last time I checked in on it wasn't it using a lot of telcos? Wasn't that sort of like it's
yeah?
So maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's just much more successful than I think it is. So again, because like I'm used to seeing like OpenShift and various other things there, but like I have never been asked, and I honestly didn't even think that I would recommend OpenStack to anyone. But I'm happy to be wrong. And I want to hear, GEICO. You should go to the. I don't know what conference GEICO would go to. I don't know.
The OpenStack Summit or the Open Infra Summit.
They should go there.
They're going to be keynoting. Undoubtedly, they're going to be on stage.
All right. Well, hopefully it'll be online because I want to watch it.
Now that my question for you, Matt Ray, is now I know this Wiz situation is working out great for you. You're fully dedicated, locked and loaded, etc. But now, what would it take to get you to go back to OpenStack? Maybe start running part of this GEICO situation. I mean, because I think you've actually used OpenStack. Now,
it's been a while. Yeah.
What are you going to negotiate here? Are you going to need to be senior director, vice president of OpenStack infrastructure? What are we looking at here? You don't have to move.
Yeah, don't make me director of hubs.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the article that we linked to, kind of pointed out some of the salaries are less than $300K. So that's what's going to get people. There are definitely still people who've been in this ecosystem, who understand the tech, who they've stayed with the game, and maybe this is the chance to get that brass ring, or maybe that's not enough. But
they were all hanging out at that one beach house co-op. They're ready to go.
That guy works on Kubernetes now.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think maybe the next time like you or JJ's salary negotiation comes up, you just one slip of paper that says, "I could always go to GEICO." You just slide that across and go to lunch. Like you got that as a trump card there.
I like it.
Yeah. I don't even know where are they. Is GEICO one of those places that's in like Des Moines or something with all the other insurance companies?
Good question. Where the headquarters is? We'll have to look that up. I don't think it's. Yeah, I think it is somewhere.
You're gonna make me relocate to Des Moines?
Yeah, it seemed fine when I was there for a little bit. Nice people. Yeah, I enjoyed it. So let's see. I think you pointed us towards this Kingmaking article, Brandon, which I read through. It was nice. It wasn't the usual just wrap up of a bunch of funny numbers and stuff with some analysis, which is also delightful to read. But there was tell me the theory that was being put across here, because I like some of the points, but you always sum things up better than I do.
Well, I think this was from a friend of the show, Jamin Ball, and he's a venture capitalist, and so he was just kind of like, if you will, riffing on this idea of kingmaking, which is basically where the market kind of, if you will, something new happens, in this case AI, and the decision is like, we need to win this, we want to fund in this case what we believe is going to be the king, but we want to give it so much money that it can almost like not, it has to succeed no matter what. So if you need $1 billion, we'll give it 10, or if it needs 10 billion, we'll give it 100. And the idea is that the opportunity and the reason you do this is so large that it justifies, if you will, overpaying or over investing early on because you believe down the road you're going to have a monopoly or maybe a duopoly of something along those lines. And so we're kind of seeing it play out in the world of AI. And what's interesting and what, I think he was pointing out was that like I don't know. I mean, it's always one of these things like it's hard to know all of history, but it's like we really haven't seen it at this level, right? This amount of investment with, we're talking billions upon billions. So you have really a handful of corporations, strategic companies, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and then you have the world's largest venture capitalists trying to decide how much money they're going to give it. And then everybody outside of that is sort of on the outside looking in. And so I think it's kind of interesting. I think he just kind of laid out what was going on there. Now, it's a little self-serving because as venture capitalists or investors try to do, it's like if you can't participate in the thing because you're not big enough, you then say, well, the thing is probably not good, right? You're like, whoa, like you're going to waste a lot of money. You're not going to build something what you want because you have too much money. And there's definitely a case to be made for that. But there's also the case to be made that it's sort of just like people are bitter. It's like, well, if you only have $100 million venture capitalist, right? If your fund's $100 million, like you're just like me. You can't get into this. They don't even want your money, right? You got the starting, if you will, the ante to play in this level is huge. So I don't know. I just think it's really interesting to see like what will come out of it. But it makes a lot of sense. Like if you're the world's largest companies and you're really only looking for $1 trillion opportunities, I can see why you do Kingmaking.
And it seemed like there were tell me if I was wrong, but there's some interesting constraints, if you will, to this way of operating. The first one you kind of hit on. I think, I don't know if this is implied or actually in there, is the end result has to be like a monopoly or a duopoly, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to like you have to like have such a huge market that you get such a huge slice of the pie out of that, like 10-20 billion in spending over 10 years isn't a big deal. Well, relative to whatever.
And I think one example he kind of lays out like SpaceX. Like if you're starting a company to build rockets,
right.
pretty big, entry fee.
And also like Uber, right? Like is another interesting one. Now, this brings up the second angle, which is like if you have, I guess what you'd call capital intensive, which is to say you have to spend a lot of money on 3-dimensional objects rather than just like software, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like railroads, rockets, cars, like a lot. I guess Uber maybe isn't, whatever. I don't know. Uber's a weird case.
No, because just to stop you there, like because they have kind of two things. Like you have to either do, if you will, capital expenditures or customer acquisition, which is what Uber did. Right?
Exactly.
Their fight was like, we just got to pay people to use this, and it doesn't matter what it costs because at the end of this, we're going to win. And during that process, most people are like, you're spending too much money. But I don't know. I mean, it'd be a good question, for Matt Delio, Ray to decide. It's like now Uber, like, seems like they did. It seems like it worked out for them, right? Like they do seem like
did it though.
I mean,
basically, if you look at the Uber financials, they're hemorrhaging money still. They basically just burned down the taxi industry across the world, and they haven't reaped the benefits. Well, other than everyone goes to ride shares, but I mean, Uber is not profitable.
But just to give some numbers here, I mean, they are worth $147 billion today.
Right. So, but how much of that is funny money and how much of it is, sunk cost fallacy of that's how much VC has been pumped into them to burn down, the taxi industry. They just lose money. And there's not this path where people are like, oh, that's how Uber's going to make money doing rideshare because nobody else will think of it, right? They're like, what, they're going to pivot to robotic cars? Well, Waymo and others are already trying to do that too, right? So Uber can't grab, they can't capitalize on the fact that they destroyed a bunch of stuff because all their competitors were fast followers who didn't have to burn through quite as much, VC to create this market, but the cost of acquiring new customers is just I install a different app on my phone, right? There's nothing sticky about Uber. No matter how hard they try with like Uber Eats or Uber for Business, it's like I can switch to Lyft at the drop of a hat.
But like, okay, so good you brought up. Lyft is worth $4.9 billion. So we're talking about like, I mean, that's what 20x. I mean, so I don't know. I don't want to. First of all, I don't want to be here like pretending like I'm defending Uber. I don't know. I'm just literally, I don't know. But like, I think if we were just in the investor meetings, they'd be like, well, seemed like it worked out. We gave Uber a lot of money. They turned it into $150 billion. We gave Lyft a lot of money. They turned it into 5. I'll take the bigger one. So, I mean, so I don't know.
But the question is, how long does the house of cards stand up? Right? How long can Uber hemorrhage money? Like I'm looking up their earnings right now, but like, how long can they keep doing that? It's I don't know.
Well, I think the as an adjacent concept, the creating a moat around difficulty of customer acquisition, or as we call that in the infrastructure world, lock-in, is that's kind of like a fascinating strategy there. I mean, a strategy to kind of see from the outside and evaluate from sort of an investment like venture way of looking at it is, and I can see how dumping a lot of money into something. I mean, I don't know, maybe this is the fallacy of 2000s and 2010s thinking about how you grow a company, but just like get a bunch of customers, but also make sure they can't ever leave, or that it's not, and that's incorrectly stated. It's not so much that they can't leave, it's that the price of getting those customers is so high that a competitor couldn't do it very well.
Yeah.
And
I think
that's an interesting, like, I wonder if, like as Matt is saying, and as antitrust people will say, all you have to do is like change the channel, right? Like, and get a different app or go to a different thing. But I wonder if there's ways of quantifying like how much. Well, I guess they would know how much does like DuckDuckGo or Coggy spend to like get someone to stop using Google, or like how much does it cost to get someone to go from like Android to the iPhone or the iPhone to Android. Like there must be some way of thinking about it. Like, it's not the amount your customer is paying, it's the amount you're paying to like switch them to from
switching
to
costs,
your
acquisition costs, right? Yeah. Well, I do think it's interesting. Maybe part of the thing about Kingmaking that I think makes people uncomfortable, or at least makes people think about it, is it's sort of, if you will, the purest form of capitalism. Whereas there isn't like this, like, well, there's these people in a garage and they built this thing and it grew out of nowhere. And, it's kind of like, the classic story we like to tell. It's more like, no, we just got the most money together and we just dominated, right? And we made, and you know what? And we just did everything we could possibly do to crush the competition, and we won, right? And it's sort of, if you will, it's not like a great story we like to tell. And I think that's maybe why when I was reading this article, it just sort of jumped out at me. It's sort of like why people are like, oh, you can't just win with money. You can't just, you've got to make sure you get customers and stuff like that. Well, actually, sometimes you can't. It's like when someone wins a fight and that person wasn't in shape. They didn't know how to fight. Well, it turns out they were just huge. They were just a lot bigger than the other person. And they just dominated the fight. And it's like, yeah, well, that's just sometimes how it goes, which is, I don't know, which is interesting because it does feel like AI is now in this, at least the version of AI we're watching is kind of doing this, which is interesting.
Yeah. I think in that case, there's the brand of OpenAI and ChatGPT, which seems very hard to surpass, or not. I have no. We'll see how things are in the enterprise. Well, speaking of how things are in the enterprise, do we have any bureaucracy this episode, Brandon?
We have a few things here. One, I want to let you know, if you want a sticker, all you have to do is send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. And you can get a sticker like the one I sent to Bruce in Texas. I think, Cote, that's your old coworker. I sent one to Matthew in Alabama. So, roll tide, of course. And then a few recommendations out of the Slack I thought I would say. One, a longtime friend of the show, Michael says, quote, "I am not hating Bad Monkey," which is in I'm going to convert, which is like a 5-star review from Michael. So Bad Monkey is a relatively new show on Apple TV. It stars Vince Vaughn. I think I would concur with the statement. It's like, it's exactly what you think it is. It's Vince Vaughn sort of doing stuff, but mostly just being Vince Vaughn. So like, if you've seen Swingers and you want to see Vince Vaughn as an older person doing it, you should check that out. And then Murderbot, which I think I know Matt has for sure recommended it on the show. I maybe even recommended one of the books on the show or short stories, but that came up in the Slack, and that seems to be get like universal appraise from the Software Defined Talk Slack. If there was like a book of the year, I think Murderbot would be it. Everyone likes it. So if you haven't read it,
it doesn't matter which book in the series, right? It's just like Murderbot, the whole series.
Everyone likes it. That's what people say. Loved it. Finished the whole series. So yeah. So Murderbot, if you want, they could if they want, what does they call those? Like pull quotes. They can maybe put it on their covers, like Software Defined Talk Book of the Year. Go ahead. You have our permission if you want to use that.
Wow.
Promotional material, because it seems
be that all those business books, all the all the Amazon books.
Because there's in the Slack, as you know, there's a lot of different opinions, but
Didn't one has read some books. Shouldn't that be our book of the year?
Well, those are old books. This has got to be released.
Usually, when you put something in this, like there'll be a bunch of people that like something, and then in the Slack, someone will be like, "I read it. I didn't think it was very good." And so far, no one
universal praise.
Yes. No one else has done that on Murderbot. Now, I'll wait. I'll check the Slack, next week. Maybe someone will come in and rain on the parade. But there you have it.
Yeah, they'll say it's not bad. It's not a bad book. I'm not saying it's terrible. It'll be high praise. Well, I like that. How did you describe the Bad Monkey Show? It's
I'm not hating it. That's Michael's book. I'm not hating it. Sorry.
Or just Vince Vaughn kind of doing some things.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Vince Vaughn just doing things. Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, that sounds like my new career aspiration. Just Cote just kind of doing some things. That's what I'm going to shoot for. That sounds relaxing. Well, speaking of me doing some things, there's several conferences coming up. Next week, September 19th and 20th, I'll be at SRE Day London. I think, don't worry, I have this written down somewhere. I just don't know at the moment. I think I'm giving a talk on developer productivity thinking, and hopefully I'll have some time to update the presentation since last time I gave it, because I had lots of good conversation with our friend John Willis about how developer productivity is kind of a distraction from stuff.
Coach, there's got to be a little platform engineering in there. That seems like your new thing, right? Will you work that in? Or is that?
I had someone email me. I think they said they were listening to last week's episode. And I was saying, oh, well, Kubernetes, which like just destroyed 10 years of my career's work. And this listener said that they were working out in a gym that was filled with a bunch of senior citizens, and they laughed out loud, and they got some looks from the old folks, which I think that's a certain type of victory.
They were probably just amazed at the wireless headphones.
Yeah, that's right. Look at how small they are.
Bone conducting, no less.
Yeah, and so yeah, I can't help but somehow have a little jab at platform engineering and Kubernetes and stuff in any presentation.
So, but the real question was John Willis on board with renaming DevOps Days?
Oh, I haven't ran that by him yet, but we'll see what happens.
You should tell everyone what your proposal was, because I thought it was. I guess maybe we should save it for another show, but I think it's a little controversial. Like,
this is I was proposing. This is after talking with several DevOps Days organizers. They had an organizer summit before the DevOps Days Antwerp, and the overall sentiment seemed to be, we need to do something because we don't get as much sponsorship money as we used to. We're lowering in prominence, which is kind of true. And so I think other people have suggested this as well, maybe in their meetings. But I was just saying they should rename themselves to Platform Days. Just go for it. Like, never mind all this platform engineering versus DevOps stuff. Just the DevOps community should just like subsume the whole thing and pretend like it's not separate. Just go for it. And they should probably experiment with like 3 or 4 of the events and rename them and see what happens. But
all right, well, I like it. Write in, tell us if you think Platform Days is good. Maybe I'll put a poll in the Slack. Platform Days or DevOps Days? So I do think underneath there, there's a lot of power in those words. So I'll be interested to hear what other people say.
Yeah, I mean that's actually been another use of AI that I've been doing, that I started doing today and yesterday, is I've been trying to load up a bunch of DevOps and platform engineering stuff into it and really have it tell me what the differences are in practical terms. And I don't know, it's inconclusive at the moment. But speaking of things that will not be inconclusive, which is to say conclusive, it's concluded that Cloud Foundry Day EU is October 9th. in Germany, in Karlsruhe, which I don't know how to pronounce. But I'll be there as well, and there'll be other people in the Cloud Foundry world there. Then there's VMware Explore in Barcelona, November 4th, 7th. I think I'll be speaking several times there, probably at least once. And then finally, there'll be SRE Day Amsterdam, November 21st. I'm speaking there as well. There's some discount codes for most all of those that you can get if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/484. For the SRE days and the Cloud Foundry day, if you're interested in 20% off. The Cloud Foundry day is an especially good deal because it's only 50 euros to start with. So I'll let people who have spreadsheets do the math. You can use that Solver app and figure out. I think it makes it cheaper somehow. Now, speaking of things that can be made cheaper, definitely if they are recommended on this episode, it does the opposite. It enriches them. It makes them worth more valuable. What do you have to recommend this episode, Brandon?
I have two things to recommend this week. One, Coach, you already mentioned it. I was lucky enough to be on the Cloudcast this week. It's the title episode is Cloud News of the Month for August 2024. So Brian and I kind of talk a little bit about AI and what's going on in the world. So if you want something else to listen to, check that out. And at the end, you'll be encouraged to sign up for Cote's newsletter again. So definitely do that as well. And then on Netflix, there's a new movie out I just watched called Rebel Ridge. Pretty good, kind of interesting. It's a premise I think many of you are familiar with in movies, but sort of toward the end, it kind of goes a slightly different direction. So if you're kind of interested in like an action adventure kind of revenge story, but with maybe like a slightly different take, you should check out Rebel Ridge on Netflix.
How about yourself, Matt Ray? What do you have to recommend?
I guess at this point, it's now a classic. My recommendation is Interstellar. I'm watching it with my kids, and what's interesting, what I have a particular eye for is I'm watching the AI, watching the robots and their AI and the movie, and it's kind of interesting because they talk about hey, can you adjust your obnoxiousness slider 5%, and you can just kind of visualize this this AI interface on top of them where hey, I need you to be 95% more truthful, that kind of stuff. So it's plus it's a good movie, but I definitely recommend Interstellar.
Is that the one with Matthew McConaughey?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was mixing it up in my head with the one with what's the one that's what's that fella's name? But I think it's based on a Lim book or something where it's like Moon or something like that.
Oh, with not Ed Norton, but Moon.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah.
Much
that
different.
One's good too.
Solaris, and that's what it's called.
Yes. Oh, Solaris is yet another movie with George Clooney, and it's a remake of a Russian movie. So, and my order of recommendations there would be Moon, and then Interstellar, and then Solaris,
and then Solaris.
Yeah, way down the line of those three.
Wow, that would be a good three movies in a day. Little breaks there.
The Interstellar's long, and the original was like 7 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who would watch that?
Russians.
Wow. Well, anyways, speaking of Russia, right next door to Russia is Finland. And when I was there, I picked up a pair at the insistence of our friend Charles Lowell of these things called Reno slippers, which we'll have a link to them in the show notes. They're kind of hard to describe, but they're basically house shoes that come kind of up to your ankle. And they have this outrageous plaid pattern on them. And apparently, I did a little bit of fact checking on what Charles was telling me. And apparently, since like the 30s, these have been popular house slippers. And in Finland, they have that habit of like, you take your shoes off before you go into the house, which I can confirm. And then, so these are the slippers you put on, for wearing inside to keep your feet warm. And they are, I think I was wearing them the other day. Around the house, and my wife Kim said, "Your transformation to an old man is complete." And
nailed it.
Congratulations, Cote.
Yeah, it's no problem. I'm going to start wearing Hawaiian shirts as well, and just kind of hanging out. having a good time. Well, speaking of hanging out and having a good time, you've done exactly that with another episode of Software Defined Talk, the podcast you just listened to. Now, there's all sorts of things we didn't talk about, links to those fantastic slippers, recommendations, and all sorts of news items that we didn't talk about. And you can get links to that stuff at softwaredefinedtalk.com/484. We also have a Slack channel. And if you've enjoyed the episode and you're not a member of it, you should join it. There's all sorts of discussions there, links we go over. I don't know. There's also a sports channel. Is that pretty active, Brandon? Are people talking sports?
Absolutely. There's like tons of sports going on in there. So yeah, that's one of many, if you will, non-tech channels in there. So check them all out.
And I'll give an endorsement. I mean, even the as always when Brandon is on the Cloudcast, it turns into perhaps the world's only hybrid cloud college football podcast. I think you two could just weave back and forth between them.
Ooh, which that does sound good.
Absolutely, that's right. You got to find your niche, and we found the niche. Yep. Only 2 people care, but it's a great niche.
I'm in.
All right, well there you go, 3.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone out there enjoys hanging out in their niche, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
All right, excellent job. Hey, Matt, quick question. Did your mic touch your mic again? I feel like your mic switched halfway through that. Thumbs up. Something you got loud there. It's fine.
I did accidentally hit the arm with my arm, and it got a wiggle, but
all right. Well, I think the gate. I don't know. It's fine. It'll work out. We'll level it. So I know you got to go.
I got to run. So
all right.
Bye.
Talk to you guys later.
All right, Cote, it's a quick after show. Why don't we talk college football? And I'll just ask you one question. I'm going to ask you 2 questions about the state of Alabama. All right. Roll Tide and War Eagle. Can you associate those, if you will, cheers with the actual colleges?
Well, I think the first one is University of Alabama.
That's right. Roll Tide. Right? Congratulations. And this is for Michael. Michael's on listening right now. So, can you get the second one right?
I didn't even understand what the second phrase was. Roar Eagle?
It is War Eagle.
Eagle.
War Eagle. Can you get it?
Is there any other type of eagle? That's my question.
I don't know. The bald eagle, of course. And there's the War Eagle. I don't know. I think there are probably lots of eagles. Yeah, can you name the other? Can you name the other major college in the state of Alabama?
I mean, it's probably like State of Alabama, Alabama College, Alabama Mechanical. I'm just going to run through all.
I just want to say, fear not for all the European and people living outside the United States and people that just don't like college football. Feel right at home. Cote's lived, in the state of Texas for a long time, and he's been around a lot of football in his life, and he's picked up almost no knowledge. So somehow he's done it. So fear not. If you don't know what you're talking about, Cote doesn't know. So War Eagle is the chant for Auburn University, which is another large state university in the state of Alabama. And the rivalry between Alabama and Auburn, although is one of the strongest in the nation, maybe number 1. Other people would argue Ohio State, Michigan. There's several others. So there you go, Cote. I filled your knowledge of college football has grown, by 0.1% today. So there you go.
I mean, you might even say it's doubled.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you for being on today. Thank you for providing us with a strong recommendation this week. And then inadvertently, thank you for supplying us with a good trivia question for Cote that everyone has now learned a little bit of college football. So anyway, maybe next week we'll, we'll work on the NFL next week, Cote. We'll give you a trivia question because it's NFL season. So
yeah.
All right. With that,
go Maple Leafs.
We will talk to everyone